Entrepreneurs Enigma is a podcast for the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, so the wins and the fails that we all face being entrepreneurs, and how we learn from adversity. Every week I talk to a different entrepreneur with a story to tell. I'm Seth Goldstein. Come with me on the journey. This is Entrepreneurs Enigma. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Entrepreneurs Enigma podcast, episode 213. The reason I mentioned it, the issue number, I can't speak today. The episode number is because Brendan was my fourth guest originally on Entrepreneurs Enigma way back when, and now he's 213. So this is awesome, and a lot has changed. I mean, he's done a lot. Before the podcast, he says he does one new project a year. The thing is, he might do one project a year, but he doesn't get rid of another project, though.
Correct.
He just adds on one a year. And it's just like, this guy has more projects than I do. And people who know me know that I always have something up my sleeve. Brendan is a former teacher, a recovering teacher. If you don't, haven't been following along since.
Accurate.
Yeah, recovering teacher. I mean, you did it. I'm sure you enjoyed moments. But being a teacher is one of those thankless jobs where it's like you put your all into it and it's never good enough. Either the kids criticize you, the parents criticize you, the administration criticizes you. It's tough. So, but he survived that, and then he has been in the SaaS world since then. He's been in-house and he's been out of house, I guess, entrepreneurial. He's done the side hustle. He's done the full hustle. He's done the full hustle and the side hustle for his full hustle. So Brendan, how's it going, buddy? How you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm excited to chat again. It'll be good to catch up. It's been definitely
at least a year
since the first time we did this.
That's been like 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to look it up, man. August 2021 was definitely definitely a very different time in my life.
It was in your life and in the world.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So fill me in. What's changed?
So I'm trying to remember exactly. So
I think you were at Active Campaign. You had a full-time hustle and like 16 side hustles.
Yeah, I was at Active Campaign, but I was still doing a lot of stuff on the side, right?
Yes.
So I have this problem where I see things that I want to exist in the world, and I usually complain about them once or twice, and then I go make them. Yeah. That hasn't transcended into like software or anything yet, but it usually transcends into platforms and media and community and things like that. So I went in-house in the end of 2020. We first kind of recorded and chatted in 2021. And what I'd done when I went in-house, I'd always been agency side previously. Yeah. And when I went in-house, I was like, this is hard. This is a different kind of hard than agency. Where can I find some help on this? And it did not exist. Like all the marketing slacks, I paid $150 a month for Pavilion. I was trying to pay every community I could get into to just find this stuff out. And it did not exist. There was nothing that existed because it's just marketing communities mostly suck, especially the ones you pay for. People make it sound like they're better if you pay for them, but they're not. It's actually worse. I know this sounds crazy. People are like, well, they're more curated. People are paying to be here. It's not so spammy. It's actually the opposite. People feel entitled. Like, I'm paying for this. I deserve to spam to do a link dump every week of like, listen to my podcast. Here's me on LinkedIn, or just like, and I hate that. And I was just like, this is just a bunch of marketers promoting themselves to other marketers. Where is the place that you go to figure out how to navigate this like faded pirate treasure map that is, corporate bureaucracy?
Oh, and God, it's something. Yeah.
And I realized pretty quick that I wasn't great at that. I really struggle with, let's have 30 meetings to have 30 more meetings about maybe launching a page 2 years from now. Like that, just how slow that moves.
Bureaucracy is tough. Yeah. There's a reason why with my agency, we don't touch enterprise for that reason. Cause it's just, too much bureaucracy, too much like how many people do I have to handhold to get something done? It's just not worth it.
I had a big company tell me one time they couldn't hire me because I had less than 10 employees,
What?
which is just like one of the most insane. Like, imagine why that rule was created for them internally. Like, what happened in your company where you're like, we only work with contractors that have more than 10 employees? Like, I did stuff like that, like I agree. The
It's
same. Like,
pubkits, yeah, pubkits.
big companies and small companies. There's a reason I say on the Growth Sprints website that I am perfectly a fit to help companies scale from 10 to 100 million in revenue. And
Mhm.
what that really means between me and you and everybody listening and watching is, A, can you get the work done? Do you have
Yeah,
enough resources to actually do the thing? And then second, are you going to be awful to work with? Because really small software companies,
yeah,
in my experience, my red flag is like if I get on and I'm talking to a founder and they're like really excited, like I kind of know it's going to go bad because they don't have anybody in marketing and they think that I'm going to come in and work magic and that they don't really understand marketing either. So I'm going to
yeah.
make recommendations, whatever. They're going to be under, that's the thing I've heard only from like the solo founders I've worked with.
Yeah,
Where like,
solo founders are tough.
this is kind of underwhelming. And I'm like, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to make you money. Like,
Yeah, it's a
if
little
you want me
different.
to
Yeah,
come up with a bunch of wacky stuff that's like, wow, Brendan's so cool and smart. Like, I can do that.
yeah.
Most of it won't work, but like, what am I here to do? You
That's
know
true.
what I mean? It like misaligns
Mhm.
incentives. Same thing again on the big company side, right? If I got to have 40 people on the call to present
Oh, that sounds
a
awful.
content strategy,
Yeah.
like we got a problem. So, you
It's
know what,
a
man?
a
Like,
sweet spot. It's a sweet spot, like, bigger,
yeah,
small, more mid-sized, but not too big, yeah.
yeah, not and that I think the reason that that's been going well
Yeah.
was like I had kind of said. I think it was early. We're coming up in April. I had to put it on the calendar because honestly, I forgot. Like when I quit my job, you would have thought it would have been like a bigger deal, but like I didn't. It's the same as when I went from teaching to working at an agency. I literally the school year ended on a Friday, and Monday I was in the office
You didn't
at my
waste
new
any
job.
time, yeah.
And it's the same thing with doing my own thing full time. I just the next week started and I just had less meetings than I had before.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
And it wasn't like any big deal because everything had already been running. There's this wonderful book by Sean McCabe called Overlap.
Yes,
And he
I've heard
just
of that.
talks about like overlapping your thing you're doing now with your next thing, and you just keep like stacking, but they always should overlap. And I was like, that's
That's
the best
awesome.
analogy.
We're gonna take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, and get right back to the show. I love that. Yeah, it's so true because having a gap in stuff. I mean, it doesn't always look good on your resume, but not just that. Having a gap, you get stale. Even if it's a week, it's like sometimes you need a week. Maybe let's be honest. Sometimes you need to decompress. But taking more than a week to get into your next gig it's tough. You have to at that point you're almost in vacation mode at that moment because you isn't there's I forget what book or somewhere that said that like the first week on vacation you're just decompressing. You're not in
Mhm.
vacation mode till you're in the second week. Like you have to take 2 week vacations just to get relaxed. And so it's wild, man. So you have a newsletter which everyone should sign up called Growing Up. I love it. I just signed up today. I didn't even know you had it. So I was like, oh, sign up for this. Absolutely. You are the founder community lead for All In, which is allinhouse.co, which is the community you were talking about, right? It's the one where it's like in-house, helping people actually get what they need from a community.
Yeah, and
And then
it's
yeah,
free.
you
I
make
keep
growth
it small on
spurts. Yeah.
purpose. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just for in-house software marketers.
And it's
Very
brilliant 'cause it's
focused.
exactly what's needed.
Yep.
That's brilliant. And then, of course, you have growth sprints, which is kind of helping. It was what we were talking about, helping SaaS companies go from 10 million to 100 million ARR. ARR. That's a hard to say one. So and you have a framework and all that stuff. So, I
Yep.
mean, you've done this, and you kind of tell you're still a teacher. Like everyone says, journalism never left me. Teaching, I don't
Yeah.
think ever left you.
100%. I
So
think you can
you're still
absolutely
getting
like it's in my
ROI on
nature.
your education.
I just want to share everything I know. Like I don't
Yeah.
I made a post on LinkedIn over the weekend that got a lot of attention
Hmm.
because it was me airing out some frustration with
That always does.
people who don't tell you the whole truth. People who will
I hate when
say,
that
"Oh, I
happens.
made $1 million last year," or "I made
Mhm.
700 grand in the last 6 months by my course." It's always like, just typical
Pitching, yeah.
online marketing, right? Like I'm gonna make you feel less than. I'm gonna make a hole in you so you feel like you can fill it with my course or my coaching or whatever.
Yeah.
But the problem is I know all those guys that post that stuff and they never explain to you. I know behind the scenes of a bunch of their businesses and they never tell you the whole thing.
They're like a
And
10-year overnight success.
or just like, there's a
I
guy
hate
who's
those
always
ones.
talking about how he makes $1 million a year as a one person design agency. And he sells a course on how to do that. Obviously,
Yeah.
funny enough, the course has also sold $1 million. Weird. Um,
Yeah.
and now it's because, but what he doesn't tell you is he's been hospitalized twice for stress. Like he still
Yeah.
hasn't figured out how to not almost die from doing the thing that
Uh,
he's selling you, right?
yeah,
Or
and
the
doing a
guy who's
one-man
like,
operation is insane.
yeah, or like the $4 million solopreneur who's going to teach you how to be a solopreneur, but his main revenue stream is teaching you how to write tweets and LinkedIn posts. And
Yeah.
that's a different. But what he doesn't a that's a it is what it is.
Yeah.
And his stuff is good. I bought it. But what he doesn't tell you is that the reason his stuff gets a lot of reach is because of all the back channel networking he does, where he hooks up with
Yeah.
30 other creators and they all
And
become
they have
friends
that
and they
little,
amplify each
share,
other's stuff.
yeah, the share
Yeah,
circle.
or
Yeah.
it's, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn. I want to grow on Twitter. So what he did was he found a bunch of people who are big on Twitter that weren't on LinkedIn, and he's like, let's work together.
Yeah, and
But
how
that
much
doesn't
ROI happens from that, and that's just why I'm
but that
always like,
doesn't sell in a
yeah,
course, right? Like
it doesn't sell anything.
I would actually pay more. I'd pay 10 grand for that course if you were like, hey, here's how to build like strategic partnerships.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But they don't
Yeah.
it doesn't the problem is it doesn't sell as clean as like, let me teach you how to tweet, right? So
Let me
stuff like
teach you
that,
how to tweet.
I just want people to
Yeah.
teach the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
teach the levers and share the levers that actually work.
But not everyone's an educator, dude. That's the thing. Not everyone's an educator and has a mindset of education. They're business people. I'm not saying you're not a business person, but they don't have a background in education where you tell the whole story. And then if people wanna know more, they buy your course because they already have actual content that they can just go run with, great. But people buy from people they know, like, and trust too. And
Absolutely.
that's a big thing I think that is missing on LinkedIn is like, A, we're we're just doing, we're posting for the sake of posting for the algorithm, and B, we're not telling the whole story, which is very frustrating, and it makes everyone feel like, "Well, why am I not doing that?" Well, and that goes back to the whole thing of the 10-year overnight success. A lot of these people say, like, "I'm making $1 million this year." How long have you been in your business for? Or how long have you been doing this for in general?
Right.
You may have changed your name of your company a bunch of times. Oh, it's been 10 years? Oh, that makes more sense because first year, everyone's scrambling. I mean, you might hit that one big ticket item that might get you 200 grand. Great, mazel tov. Great, good for you. But like,
Yeah.
can you
Or you have
replicate
people
that?
that
Yeah,
like they don't explain. They're like, oh, here's how I made 700 grand as a consultant. And you're like, 500 of that came from a contract
yeah.
with a guy that
One
you've known for 15 years and your kids go to school together. Or like they're not explaining like how they get like what was the act because you can't sell that. And anytime somebody's selling, if they're like, I'm making an insane amount of money doing this, here it is for you too.
It's never that replicable.
I especially if it's a service
Mhm.
where you're now creating competitors, that's a question mark for me. Or it's just also a lame flex. Like all it does is make people feel bad. Nobody reads how much money you make and is like, wow, I feel better now that I've read that. Like it really does just make people feel bad because the majority, if you're flexing how much money you make, the
Mhm.
majority of people are making less. And dude, I went through that for so long when I was a teacher and I was
Oh
making
god, yeah.
45 grand a year. And it felt like everybody was winning faster than me and making more than me. And it was so hard to keep going.
Mhm.
I constantly ask myself, like, when
Me and
I'm
journalism,
creating,
same thing. Yeah.
yeah, any content, anything I'm doing, does this sounds really wild, but like I really do believe like our purpose as humans,
Uh-huh.
right? Uh is to reduce, like, life is suffering, and if life is suffering, my job is to reduce the suffering of everybody else as much as possible, right? To be
Yeah.
as of service. And that's very existential. But the
Oh,
way that looks in marketing is
you
like
also have Cicero behind you, so it kinda makes sense. Or
it's Marcus
Aristotle.
Aurelius. It's the same. Dude,
Well, you
he's
have an
actually
old
huge.
dude with a good beard and good hair, so there you go. In a
He's bigger
toga.
than, like, I'm 6'1" and like 260. I'm a big dude. And like he's bigger than me. I didn't know the statue was that big. Like if I scoot back, you're like,
Oh my god,
oh,
he's
that's he's
huge!
way bigger.
Oh my
Than I
god.
am. So like,
For those who are not watching the video on YouTube, go look at YouTube just for that one clip. But that's a big statue.
we'll make a special clip of it. We'll make it a short.
You
Um
absolutely.
but my point is like I that sort of thing, like so much of how I go to market
Yeah,
is like what can I make that answers the questions nobody's answering right now. Like the growing up
yeah,
newsletter,
yeah,
I work with so many CMOs and VPs of marketing, and I'm like, there's nobody out there create, like there's all these like, interview podcasts with CMOs and things like that.
yeah,
And I love that. And they usually talk about career path, which is important. But
yeah.
nobody talks about like the stuff that actually helps a CMO be successful, right? Like
Mhm.
how
And
do you
isn't that
organize your meetings?
it's
How
the
do
same
you
industry where they're where you last 18 months as CMO and it's the turnover and CMOs are crazy.
Yes. And a lot of that is like, how do you hire? How do you organize your meetings? How do you structure your teams? How
Mhm,
do you, stay creative but also keep people accountable? How do you think about, making bets in your marketing?
mhm,
Like I wanted to pull that out of people that I admired, and it's like that has grown a lot.
mhm.
And people are like, this is, and it's not like a general, generic resonance, right? Like I think I have 27,000 people on my email list, but I'm pretty sure close to 10,000 people have unsubscribed,
Yeah.
right? Because they thought they were going to get like tips and hacks and SEO stuff. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, here's how to actually have a successful career. And they're like, yeah, that sounds hard.
Well, then fine, you don't want them on your list, and that's the best way to
Yep.
prune your list. And that's a whole 'nother episode. How to prune
Yep.
your list. Get rid of 10,000 people where it's not painful. So,
I do that all the time. I look at the people who haven't opened emails in the last couple months and just
you just take them
unsubscribe
off.
them.
Yeah.
Yep. Because
Why
it's a
keep 'em?
cost.
It's a cost, and also the chance for your unsubscribes and your spam links and all that stuff for people putting in spam. It's better to get rid of them before they do anything. It's just like, get rid of them. So,
Yeah, and like what's the incentive here? Is it, this is again, we get back into like what are we actually doing? It would look way better if I posted on LinkedIn, I built my email list to 50,000 people and 100,000 people read my emails. Like that looks more impressive.
how many
You know,
unsubscribed?
yeah, and but or just like it's 100,000 people but it's a 12% open rate,
Oh.
right? Like
That's actually
that
not a bad
sort of
open rate,
stuff.
actually, come to think of it. That's not a bad
Uh-huh.
open rate. 12%, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'd rather keep it smaller and have, 67% of people read at least one
Yeah,
email a month, which is where I'm at right now. Like, I love
that's
that.
awesome.
I
Yeah,
wanna keep that.
mine recently, the last 3 came out, and they were, like, 80% open rate, and I was like, "Oh my god." I
Yep,
mean, I'm writing to write, and if they don't read it, fine, whatever,
yep.
but I'm like, "My open rates are insane," and people are like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "I just write good content," and people wanna read it, and then those who don't wanna read it, unsubscribe. Good,
Mhm.
you know? It's that simple. So, Brendan, where is the most best watering hole for you right now? Because 'Cause you're all over the place.
I mean, it's definitely LinkedIn. That's where I
Yeah,
share something cool every single day.
you do, it's fantastic.
You already mentioned the newsletter. It's
Yeah,
kind of a mix between here's my best advice, here's the best stuff, like from a journalism standpoint, like
yeah,
doing the exploring and the interviewing and the researching
mhm.
of how to do your job as a marketing executive. And then also a bit of like news and things like that. Like
It's
here's
always
some
good,
stuff
yeah.
you might not be aware of to stay current. I think that is also super important as a
Yes.
marketing leader. But yeah, you can also, here's the other thing. You can also Google me. I'll pretend it's because I'm good at SEO, but if you Google Brendan Hufford and you just sound it out as best you can,
You're
you'll
not
find
like Seth Goldstein you're not like Seth Goldstein where it's like the Smith of Jews. Like, like, literally, everyone's last name is Goldstein, and add Seth in front of it. There's a famous Seth who is an angel investor in SoCal, or not in
Yep.
SoCal, in San Francisco. We used to always get each other's tweets back when I was on Twitter. He was at Seth and I was at Seth Goldstein. So I would forward him tweets if people were tweeting to me when they should have been tweeting to Seth. And I'm like, "Oh
That's
my god."
so funny.
And we became friendly
I
we
was
became friendly because of that, so
who is it? I always use the example of Justin Jackson, who's a guy
yeah.
that I love. No chance. Like no, there's has to be so many Justin Jacksons in the world.
You
Like
just
that
write
is so
transistor
hard.
after that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's like there's like 6 professional athletes named Justin Jackson right now. Like
I'm
it's
on the top for Seth M. Goldstein because I
there
use it
you
as a
go.
journalist, but I don't like to use my middle initial, and I'm really upset that, like, I went second page for Seth Goldstein, but I'm like, "Hey, now with the continuous scroll, it's not that bad." So
Well, I'm
I'll
better
take
at
it.
SEO than Seth, so I'm on
There you go.
page 1 and number 1 for Brendan Hufford.
Oh, God, love it, buddy. Alright, Brendan, this has been so much fun. Let's make sure it's not another 2 years before we get you back on, or at least us chatting in general, because this is always a blast, buddy.
Yeah, man, I love it.
Awesome, and guess what? We'll see everyone next time. That was a great show. If you're enjoying Entrepreneur's Enigma, please review us in the podcast directory of your choice. Every review helps other podcast listeners find our show. If you're looking for other podcasts in the marketing space, look no further than the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net. Goldstein Media hopes you have enjoyed this episode.